Hey everybody, I am Haley Gray. I'm so excited to be with you here today. I am just the tech operator. I am the group owner in the Women's Entrepreneur Network, and we're excited to have and bring you another edition of WEN-Talk. Today's first speaker is joining us from New Zealand. You're in New Zealand, right?
Sydney, Australia.
Sydney. I'm like, why can't I remember that? You and Claire are in one's in Sydney and one's in New Zealand, and I apologize. And it is 5 o'clock in the morning, so you have gotten up really, really early before the sun rises to join us and to be our first speaker. So I'm excited to have you here, and welcome, and I give you the stage. So glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Haley. I am honored to be kicking off the WEN Talks. Hi, everyone. Just before we fully dive into this, can you say hi if you're watching this live, even if you're watching the replay after? Say hi and let me know where you're watching from. I always come back and check the comments as well and see how much we're engaging. So that would be fantastic. I am Tara Mollel, and I'm talking to you today all around burnout, the cost of burnout, and 3 ways we can refuel our fire and combat those effects. So again, please do say hi. Love to see you all here and watching. I will be honest and say that I often struggle to know, how do I introduce myself? How do I sort of sum up all that I am, all my interests, my passions, my skills, and my knowledge, all the aspects about me that come together to make me me? How do I reduce that down into one kind of snappy sentence, enough for you to go, oh yeah, I get it. I know who she is. I guess I'll do what we all kind of do when we introduce ourselves, and I'll tell you what I do for work. Well, I'm an education leadership consultant, and I specialize in digital technologies for communication and learning. 10 years ago, if you'd asked me to introduce myself, I would have proudly stood here and said, I am a dance teacher. And I would have fully embodied and summed up all that I believed I was. That would have summed up every fiber of my being, my passion, everything would have been summed up in that short title. It would only be about 2.5 years from that point that it would be a very different story. So again, tell me, why are you here? Why have you come to these talks? Why are you here for this talk? I'd really love to know. Now, in the meantime, let me give you a little bit of my backstory. I came to creative education quite early. I was 14 when I started teaching dance. So by the time I graduated high school and it was time for me to decide what I was going to do for uni or college, I really narrowed it down to 2 choices. 1, dance education. And yes, you can do dance at uni. And 2 was criminal psychology. Now, some may say that there are some very close parallels between the 2 of them, but as most 18-year-olds, I made my decision very logically, and I chose my course subject based on which was closest to the uni bar. So dance education won out. After studying that for 4 years, I came out and I was hit with the very real realization that no one was hiring. There wasn't any work in the dance education space. So again, a very simple decision was made. I'll just hire myself. And that's pretty much how my first business started. No one else is going to hire me, so I'll hire myself. I'm pretty naive in my early 20s. Now, I just want to go back and remind you all, I had just spent 4 years studying dance. So I was very good at fouettes and tondus, not so much at financial spreadsheets or marketing or knowing any of the legal stuff that I had to do in order to set up a business. So from that point, the next 6 years were a very, very steep learning curve. Now, all this entrepreneur and hustle porn that we see all over social media, that was me. I worked 24/7. And if I could have worked 25/7, I totally would have. But I was in my early 20s. I could. I really had no other responsibilities or anything else to do other than make this business work. And it did. Over the 6 years that I was in charge of the business, it grew exponentially. And I ended up having a very successful business. So from the outside, I ticked all the boxes to success. Right? I had everything that should make me happy. But in all honesty, I was miserable. On the outside, people could see that I had a successful business. I had 15 beautiful staff. I had new clients easily onboarding every quarter. I had an incredible partner who was also in the performance space. We lived in a gorgeous apartment overlooking Sydney Harbour and Sydney Harbour Bridge. It was amazing. We had everything that we should want or ever need. I remember thinking to myself at the age of 27, is this it? Is this all there is? Have I achieved everything that I need to achieve? What else is there? You see, what people didn't see was the struggle that it was to get out of bed every morning. The struggle and the intense effort that it took just to get dressed, just to clean my teeth. What people didn't see was the excessive drinking at night just to get to sleep. What people didn't hear was the incessant, relentless buzzing in my head, the noise that would not stop. People didn't feel the tension in my body. I was so wound up that at any moment I could snap. People didn't feel the emptiness and the loneliness that I was experiencing during those last 18 months of my business. Now, at the time, I didn't have the language. I didn't know what was going on. I just knew that something wasn't right. But I didn't have the language to describe how I was feeling, what was going on. I can look back now and say that I was in burnout, and I was in that space for a long, long time. Now, the World Health Organization, and I have to read this definition so I don't get it wrong, has described burnout as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. I would add that it is physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion. And the thing about burnout is it doesn't stay in the workplace. It may originate from the workplace. It doesn't stay there. Burnout seeps into and infects every aspect of your life. As a result of my burnout, I ended up selling my business. I split with my partner. I sold all my possessions, and I actually moved to East Africa. Burnout cost me my financial standing. It cost me my status. It cost me my passion. My passion completely burnt up. But for me, the real cost of burnout was actually my relationships with my friends, with my family, and it cost me my identity. After I sold my business, I was completely lost. What I have noticed after talking to hundreds of women is that 3 factors need to be present or exist for burnout to thrive. This isn't an extensive list, but this is what I've found. It doesn't matter where you are, what you do, these 3 factors are always present. Number 1, it's an entangled identity. What do I mean? I am what I do, and what I do is who I am. Like I said at the beginning, I very much was a dance teacher. That's how I identified. And suddenly when I sold my business, I wasn't a dance teacher anymore. So who was I? How was I? Why was I? What was the point? What was the purpose? What do I do now? I was so lost. And so many times when we go to just introduce ourselves, how many of us then just describe ourselves based on what our business is, what our career is? We don't know how else to engage or interact with others. So an entangled sense of identity. The second factor is that this idea that help or asking for help is weakness. I was very much in this space because you know what? If I asked for help, that meant I didn't know what I was doing. It meant that, oh my gosh, people will see that I'm just kind of making this up as I go along, right? People will see that I'm an imposter, that I shouldn't be here. And in fact, right at the time, I didn't even know that asking for help was even an option. It was not in my awareness frame. I didn't even know. And I think for us as women, this is particularly true. We are expected to wear many hats. And we put this on ourselves. And I do realize that different societies place these expectations on us too. But we need to handle it, right? We have to be the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the awesome business owner and female, CEO, boss babe, right? We need to look good, right? We need to act correctly at all times. We can't lose our shit, right? We have these high standards and expectations placed on ourselves. And so if we ask for help, does that mean that I'm not capable, that I can't manage it, that I can't meet these high expectations all the time? So there's this sense of asking for help is weakness. And the third one is isolation. And boy, do we know this well right now. We have in the last 12 or more months experienced intense physical isolation. But I want you to think back before COVID and think, was there any point that maybe you were at a networking event, maybe you were at an event or a function with friends and family, you were surrounded by people, yet you still felt alone? The isolation that allows and fuels burnout is the social and emotional isolation. When we put up walls around us, again, we can't let people see that maybe we don't know what we're doing. Maybe we don't have our shit together. I know I was very much isolated, even from my team. I had a brilliant, wonderful team, but I thought, I'm the leader. I can't tell them what I'm struggling with. I can't express to them what I'm going through. I can't talk to my friends and family. They don't know what I'm going through. So I just have to deal with it myself. And by doing that a little bit every day, isolated me so much in the end. So I want to pause quickly for a moment and I want to hear from you. What are you liking? What are you loving? And what are you learning so far? Please put it in the comments. Again, even if you're watching the replay, it's really valuable for us to share our learnings with each other. And I encourage you, for the other speakers as well, to keep engaging and interacting. It really is the best way for you to learn and absorb the learnings. Let's see. Yeah, burnout is a huge problem, and COVID has definitely accelerated it even more. Absolutely. The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. Wonderful suggestion. Thank you so much. Thank you. Excellent. Wonderful. Yeah, thanks so much. If you have any recommendations, there's a book. Oh, damn it. It's called Burnout, and it's by two sisters who I've forgotten their names. I'm going to put it in the comments later once I remember. It's a wonderful book. It's a wonderful book. So it's really important that we start taking the time. Again, I don't think there's necessarily a way to completely eradicate burnout from our lives, but what the goal is to start to recognize when does it creep in, so we can take action then and there to change that narrative so we don't go down this spiraling path. As mentioned before, it was 18 months at least that I was heading down the path of burnout and in burnout. Now that's a long time to be there, and the cost was great. Now, as I said, I sold everything and I moved specifically to Tanzania in East Africa. And it was during my time there that I really got a wonderful and a much, much needed perspective shift. It suddenly became a lot clearer to me about really where I could be placing my focus and my emphasis. See, over there, relationships and the community was far more important than any individual. It was far more important than getting anywhere on time. If you had a meeting but you ran into someone that you knew, you had to stop and ask them how they were, how their family was, how their parents were, how their community is, what's going on in their lives. That's what you needed to do. There was no way people were saying, oh, sorry, got to race off. I've got something else to do. No, the focus was on the person right in front of you. It also became really clear to me that not for everyone, but a vast majority, work was really just something that was a function of life. It allowed them to put food on the table. But this idea of a career, of building your career, it just didn't quite exist to them. They couldn't quite comprehend. The focus was, again, always on family. It was on community. So I was fortunate enough to work with not-for-profit organizations and grassroots NGOs. And what I quickly saw in the organizers were they too were on the path to burnout as well. So I was privileged enough to start working with them to help combat these effects. When I came back to Australia to give birth to my children, I started to notice in the women in my mother's group, the women that I was surrounded by, they too were also either on the path or in burnout. I started working with them to coach them, work with them on their confidence. Then I started noticing the women who were in the workforce, women who were business owners or wanting to start up a business. I started to notice the burnout that they were in too. So again, I discovered what was common in all of these and the factors that needed to be at play for burnout to thrive. And I was able to work with them on a solution. How could we change the narrative that allowed burnout to exist? And here's what we came up with. Again, you can go down your wellness and mindfulness, good eating, exercise. Absolutely. Those are some really practical, tangible things that you can do to help reduce the effects of burnout. But I'm going to talk to you about some kind of higher level stuff. So number one, it's discovering your purpose. Why are you here? And your purpose is something that's greater than you. Your purpose, it's not just something that you like or you're passionate about. It's certainly not something that's just kind of fun. Your purpose is an authentic representation of you. Your purpose is this greater pull that no matter what stands in your way, you know you have to overcome it. You know that you are going to be drawn forwards by your purpose. Simon Sinek is a really wonderful resource for uncovering this. So knowing what your greater purpose is, because this purpose, we can live this purpose and it can infiltrate every aspect of our lives. The second thing is having a curiosity mindset. Instead of coming from a space of, I know, we come from a space of, tell me more. Tell me what I don't know. Help me understand what I don't know and where the gaps in my knowledge are. It makes us more open and certainly more willing to lean into those uncomfortable conversations. And the last one is connection. Connection is everything. And however you can connect, even though we're physically isolated, how can you connect socially, emotionally? Where are your support networks of other women, of other business owners, of other mums? Where can you go to truly and authentically connect with others? Be there as a support for them and allow them to be there as a support for you. This is what's really going to make a difference to combat those burnout effects. So I'll just finish up now and say, hi everyone, I'm Tara Mollel, and my purpose is to help people embrace their authentic selves so they can live passionately and purposefully. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really amazing to listen to, and hit the note, hit it right on the nose. I mean, it's just so perfect. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Haley, for the opportunity. Have a great talk, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, let me try to swap people around here. And hello, Tasha. Welcome.
Aloha. How are you, Haley?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Yeah.
Cool.
The weather's treating me kind here on Maui.
You guys always have such pretty weather.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
It's pretty nice.
It's beautiful. So I'm so happy to have you here. Welcome. I am going to turn the stage over to you. And I am so happy to have you here talking about empowerment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So I was so blessed to be asked to come on and talk about empowerment and what that means. And I know that for so many people, it's a destination point, but really it's a journey. So I know that for my personal empowerment, it has taken years and years. It's constantly evolving and changing. And it honestly is something that, you think that you've figured out where you're at and you feel good, and then something hits you and you have to work with it. So a lot of people wonder why I got into empowerment self-defense. And for me, it all started when I was 15 years old and I actually had a stalker. And it was a really interesting experience to have. It's not an uncommon story for a lot of people now that I speak to more people about this topic, but it is something that a lot of people don't like talking about. And so for me, when I met this person, they were 32, I was 15 years old, and it was this interesting experience for me because I thought that this person was a family friend, and I didn't realize what was happening until later. And so that was an eye-opener for me when I found out 2 years later that something was going on. I was able to verbally confront this person, but not physically. And I knew that if somebody had taken a swing at me or something like that, I wouldn't have been prepared. So that was the start of my empowerment journey, me going into a martial arts school and going into a dojo. And when I was there, I thought I had arrived. I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. I love martial arts. I love learning. I was studying 7 styles of Japanese martial arts. My main style was Aikido, and it was fantastic for me just to have this opportunity to be there and learn the dogma of it, the history behind it, and learn the regimen, get into it. I was doing it 5 days a week, and I realized that in that process, I was learning from all of these men, and I really wanted to have this connection with women. And so my main instructor was an Aikido instructor, and she was a female. She was amazing and wonderful, but I really wanted more of a community. And so that process didn't come until later. I had to grow and learn and really broaden my horizons And so I think when we are talking about empowerment, we have these moments where it's just like, yes, this is it. This is done. I'm here. And then something happens. I know that for so many people, I spoke to so many entrepreneurs where they felt like, yes, I have arrived just before the pandemic. Things are starting to come together. And what? Oh my gosh. So everything goes on a standstill, and you have to learn to adapt. So when it comes to the empowerment piece, I think that it is really important for you to just evaluate different areas in your life. Look at different fears that you have. Think about, what is it that scares you and why? And don't be afraid to go there and look deep and try and figure out, what is it that I need to do to overcome this? If it's public speaking, what are little tiny things that I can do to make sure that the next step is, maybe I'm going live, and talking for just a couple of minutes on a platform. Maybe then the next time it's 5 minutes, maybe the next time it's 10 minutes, but just trying to figure out those little pieces that you can do for you in order to feel more stable, more grounded, more confident. And when I'm working with my clients, it's really amazing to be able to just see this huge progression. I had a client who was a mother, and she really wanted to actually work with me because of an experience that happened with her daughter. And so she wanted to be able to protect her daughter because her daughter was so young. And we worked together for 3 months, and it was just amazing to be able to see this transformation in this woman, because she realized midway through that this wasn't just about her daughter. This was about her. And how many times have we done that? We love the people in our lives and we will protect them fiercely. But when was the last time that you protected yourself fiercely? You fought for yourself fiercely, whether that is inside a business meeting, whether that's negotiating for pay, or whether that's you just fighting for yourself. Like, I need me time. I haven't done that for myself. And so a lot of people don't necessarily connect that piece of empowerment with self-care, and also that process of empowerment with going along and really setting clear boundaries when it comes to the people in your life. What do you need to do for yourself? So maybe even when it comes to the time that you're working. Yes, it's empowering to be able to say, no, I am done with work at this time, and I'm going to spend the rest of my time with my family, or I'm going to spend the rest of my time with myself. So just thinking about that for yourself, what are certain things that you can do? I know that for me, one of the big ones was I remember being in relationships and I didn't feel that I was that smart. It was really frustrating for me to be in these different relationships. My past relationship where I actually was told that I was stupid, and I ended up going for my bachelor's degree, graduating with top scores. I went and got my master's degree, and again, really pushing myself. So I found this process for me where I had to overcome that fear of what that person was saying, what they were thinking, because what they thought really didn't matter, but it was the reflection on what I thought of myself that did. So when you're going along, when you're looking into what you need and how you can serve yourself, it's always important to take a step back and really just look at, what do I need in order to feel fulfilled, in order to feel loved, in order to feel taken care of. And I'm not just talking about, from friends and family and your partner. I'm talking about with yourself. So I needed to look at that for me, because I was more than willing to work like a crazy woman, doing, 18-hour days, 7 days a week just so that I could serve my community, or I could make enough money to support different people. And what I realized is that I was not serving myself. I did not love myself enough to be able to set clear boundaries and do what I needed to do. And so as you're going along with this process of empowerment, it's different for every single person. There is no one right way to do anything. There are millions of ways. Just like with Haley in this work, I see all of the work that she does with the summits, and they're just so amazing. And there's a million ways that she actually comes to bringing about this information and gathering all of this information for people. So when you're going along and you're working on your process of empowerment, taking the time to either sit and meditate and ask yourself questions if that's what works for you, looking into ways that you can be serving yourself more completely, and really asking yourself, what do I need? And then taking it a step further, and what am I scared of? And then after you've done that, really looking into, okay, I've figured out what I need. I've figured out what I'm scared of. What do I have to do? What are the action steps that I need to take in order to overcome that fear? So as you're going along and you are taking on this process of empowerment, this journey, it's going to take you into lots of different directions. And especially when you are going on this road, it's going to be important for you to just get really real with yourself and give yourself some grace, because as we're going along, as we are finding out more about ourselves, there are certain things that are going to come up that are going to be unsavory, frustrating. They will make you angry about yourself. And so really learning to just be kind with yourself. Give yourself that extra grace. Know that when you are in this process and you are on this journey, this is the journey of your life. You are trying to be the best version of yourself, or you want to be. And in order to get to that place, you have to be willing to dare greatly. Brene Brown says that. So in her book, I love her book because it's talking about really being vulnerable. And vulnerability is a part of empowerment. It's understanding that you are this amazing, wonderful, brilliant person, because everyone has their own brilliance. And taking this open look, like opening up a book and saying, this is me, this is who I am, this is what I have to offer, and this is what I want to work on. So I wanted to just share all of that with you today, because I think that it is so important as we are going along with this process of empowerment to understand that it is not an overnight thing. You're not going to be an overnight success when it comes to empowerment. It is going to be an ongoing journey. And also when it comes to just the broader community, looking at it from a broader perspective, with WEN, I love WEN because it's women entrepreneurs, it's a women's network, it's women helping women. It's women empowered in this process of becoming entrepreneurs and empowering one another. So learning that this piece, you don't have to do it alone. You can do it with groups of people. You can do it with a broader audience. You can do it you can do it on an island when you are far, far away from so many different people. And then you can also do it in a group, putting stuff together like what Haley's doing right now. So I just really think that it is important when we're going to talk about empowerment, when we're looking at all of these different ways of empowering ourselves, just to be vulnerable, be bold, be courageous with yourself. You don't have to go out and share with the whole world all of these different accomplishments unless if you want to. But just these small victories of understanding that you have the power to change everything. I know that I needed to go through a very long journey in order to get to the space that I'm at right now. I needed to understand that that I couldn't do it all on my own. That was a huge process when it came to my self-empowerment. And I needed to be able to open up to people. And I think so many times when we are entrepreneurs and we are going through this whole process, it's scary at times, but it's okay to be afraid of something. Fear is just a reminder that there are so many things that you can do with your life. You are learning and growing simultaneously, and you're going to make it. You're going to be great. So I really appreciate all of this time. I appreciate coming on and being able to share. Haley, so thank you so much for allowing me to be on and just share the process of empowerment for myself, my personal journey, and then also the process of empowerment for others.
Thank you for joining us today. This has been awesome. It's been an honor to have you here today. And I'm seeing lots of comments. So over on my personal profile and in the group and on the page. So please, go and find them and support them. But, this is such a touchy subject for a lot of people. I'm so glad you decided to join us today.
Thank you so much, Haley.
Thank you. Okay, now I'm going to play magic here and try to rotate people. Thank you. Hey, Jen.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Man, I'm feeling empowered. I was just watching some of the end of that of Tasha. That was amazing. That set me up like perfectly. I'm teed up. It's great.
Right? Isn't it great how that works that way?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, cool. I am so glad to have you here and welcome. And with that, I'm going to give you the stage and remove myself and welcome. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thanks so much, Haley. Well, hello, Women Entrepreneur Network. I am so honored and excited and a wee bit nervous, if I'm being completely honest. But to be able to come to you guys today, and Haley, thank you so much for providing this platform for so many others and for me as well. My name is Jen Bordeaux, and I am the Director of Public Relations with New Direction Family Law, and I love what I do. I get to help people in one of the hardest times of their life find their new direction. And I get to build relationships with the community. And I also get to do nerdy stuff on the back end and look at the psyche behind marketing and data and trends and things like that. However, that's not what I'm here to talk to you about today. Right now, I want to just tell you a little story. And I want to tell you a story about a little girl circa the summer of 1996. And this little girl was just trying to live her best life, as all the cool kids are saying these days, right? So she's about 10 years old, and she is on vacation in Iowa, which you're like, what? Who vacations to Iowa? Well, her family happened to be from that area, and they were visiting Lake Okoboji, having a great time. It was around 4th of July time. This little girl is covered in freckles from head to toe, very sunburned, and she decided to go on a bike ride with her older brother. Now, during this bike ride, she goes to turn a corner, and let's just say maybe she's not the most graceful little girl, and she turns the corner, and the tire of her bike hits the pole of a sign, and she slides off of the seat because the bike stops. The little girl keeps going with the momentum, slides off the seat, and lands on the very metal, very hard bike bar. So I know that guys always get a bad rap, or everybody's familiar with, if you kick a guy or hit or whatever, or even think about it in the nether regions, that it hurts. The ladies, this little girl can attest to the fact that that is also the case for females. So anyway, she's feeling embarrassed. She doesn't want to admit or tell anybody what just happened. So she gets back on the bike and just makes her way back home. Fast forward to the evening. She's been out on the lake, seen fireworks, been having a great time with her family. They come back off the lake and she has to use the restroom really bad. So she goes running to the bathroom and doesn't tell anybody what she's doing, goes running to the bathroom, has to, yank down her bathing suit, her little one-piece bathing suit. And remember, she's sunburned. So now her skin is on fire from yanking this bathing suit down. And then she almost doesn't make it in time. She makes it to the bathroom and then it kind of hurts to pee because of her accident on the bike. This little girl is me. If you haven't figured that out by now. So immediately after this incident, I go running down to my mom and I'm just in full tears. I am so embarrassed about what has happened, but my skin is burning because it's so sunburnt and because I don't understand necessarily why it just hurt. Maybe it had something to do, to use the bathroom. Maybe it had something to do with my bike accident. So my mom is up in arms, of course, like, what's going on? And so after lots of, reassuring me to be and encouraging me to be honest and everything, I finally admit to her about my bike accident and how I was sunburned and yada, yada, yada. Now, you're probably sitting there like, why is she telling us about ginger skin problems and injured little lady bits? Well, it's because this story of me as a little girl, this is the first time that I can definitively recall finding it difficult to open up about something that I was embarrassed about, maybe that I didn't want to admit, or maybe that I even felt a little shameful admitting. In other words, this was the first time that I remember being vulnerable. So I love what Tasha was just talking about, talking about vulnerability, talking about empowerment and giving yourself permission and asking yourself what you need. These are all different types of forms of this. And I love this community bringing these things together to talk about. So being vulnerable. At this time, again, I was only 10. I didn't know all these concepts. I didn't, but looking back, I learned 3 very important lessons. 1, vulnerability absolutely does not come naturally, even when you're little. Whenever you feel like, hey, I would just confess everything to my parents at that point. I just wanted to feel better. Nope, does not come naturally. 2, vulnerability is scary as hell, which is probably why it doesn't come naturally. But 3, and probably the most important lesson out of that, is that vulnerability breeds strength and resilience. And that is a necessity of life and something that we need to embrace and encourage and make the norm, right? So with that being said, though, it's not the norm, okay? And when we look at the definition of vulnerability, I like definitions because then it helps my mind, spur off different little things. So the Oxford Dictionary defines vulnerability as the quality or state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed either physically or emotionally. Now, I don't know about y'all, but who the hell wants to risk that? Nobody wants to willingly open themselves up to any sort of harm, being attacked or being harmed, physically, especially physically too, but emotionally or mentally. But that's exactly what we're doing, right? When we're being vulnerable. Even as a 10-year-old, I was so hesitant to be vulnerable and open with the one person that I trusted the most, which was my mom. And I was very blessed. I grew up in a very open and loving and safe environment. But it was still really tough just to admit something that simple, that I was embarrassed that I had this bike accident, right? But in that moment, in that simple moment of courage, that's when I learned that lesson, that vulnerability pays off. And it has proven itself time and time again. And I'm stubborn. I am very stubborn. I'm sure nobody else here is stubborn, but I'm very stubborn, and it's a lesson that I have 100% forgotten along the way. I still fight it, even though I know that it's necessary, just as many of you do. I still fight it, and that the realization that I need to be open and to let my guard down and to discuss things and to be vulnerable, and I've had to relearn it. But again, I've seen the lesson prove true time and time again, and the more it happens, the easier it gets, the more natural it becomes. But why is this so hard? As females, we're raised to be, that it's okay for females, I guess, or it's more accepted for females to be a little bit more emotional or show their emotions or express their emotions, but only kind of when it shows strength, right? It's not, and men, gosh, they can't even do that. They're raised just to be strong and provide and don't show emotion and just push through. So why is it so hard? Why is being vulnerable so freaking hard? Aside from the definition of, being fear of being attacked. And I'd love to see your comments in the chat. Like, why do you think being vulnerable is hard? We all have different experiences with this and maybe reasons that resonate with us personally as to why being vulnerable is hard. So feel free to type those in there. I would love to learn and hear from what you have to say. And hi from Indonesia. That's awesome. Hello. So being vulnerable is so hard because you can't control what happens when you open yourself up. And I don't know if there's anyone else like me, but at times I can be a bit of a control freak. So why would I voluntarily want to open myself up to an opportunity that might hurt me, make me feel shameful, and I can't control the outcome, right? The uncertainty of that. Nobody wants to do that. And in fact, and I love, again, that Tasha brought this up in her speaking just a little bit ago, she brought up Brene Brown. I hope everyone knows about Brene Brown. And if you haven't, please make yourself familiar. But she also has the definition of vulnerability, which is just, it's more empowering, right? She does all of her research around shame and vulnerability and the culture and society that we've bred that lends itself not to opening ourselves up like that. And she defines vulnerability as having the courage to show up when you can't control the outcome. I love her. I love that she takes what almost seems like a feeble idea or an idea of weakness and vulnerability, and she turns it into strength and courage, right? That's what we need. That's how we need to be viewing vulnerability. But as we start to get older, so as we're younger, we're a little bit more, a little easier for us to be vulnerable and to, cry and to learn from things and move on, right? But as we get older, we start to face problems that are beyond sunburns and bike accidents. And society teaches us to do what? Just to accept it, accept the hardships, and just push through it. Just pile it on and keep on going. We're taught that complaining about something doesn't change it, doesn't make it any better, doesn't take it away, doesn't solve the problem, that it's annoying for other people to hear you complaining, or that you might find it annoying if someone's complaining to you. And so it's that whole mentality of suck it up, buttercup, keep your chin up and just keep on pushing through. It'll make you stronger just because you're pushing through. But everybody needs to vent, right? Like, that's a natural part of life. And that's opening ourselves up. So what if instead of looking at complaining as an annoying something that someone is doing, or that you're going to be burdening someone by complaining to them, we see it as an act of vulnerability in a simpler, more common form, right? For instance, let's say maybe you're venting about your boss. We've all been there. You might be your own boss. So maybe you're venting about yourself. You're complaining about yourself. But all of us have had jobs of some form or another whenever we've had a boss. And maybe you're complaining about your boss to your coworker. Well, how can that be seen as an act of vulnerability, right? You might be venting about something that they have done or haven't done or don't recognize. But in all actuality, it could be an opportunity that you're being vulnerable to, maybe like you're feeling like you're not treated fairly, or that your work is not recognized, or that you don't feel like you're, measuring up or something. You know what I mean? And those are an expression of you being vulnerable to say, this is how I'm feeling and I'm not okay with it. Another example about money. Whew, man, we've all complained about money at some form or fashion, and probably continue to complain about money until the end of time. Whether it's not making enough money in your current role, or maybe not getting enough clients, these are all being vulnerable about a current financial status. And that's hard. That's tough. Nobody wants to talk about money problems or admit that they're not financially where they want to be. But talking about those things, it's less about complaining and the opportunity that you're being vulnerable and willing to talk about it. And I love what this person said. Opening up is hard because people now know that I'm not perfect. So true. And we don't want to have that image of imperfection, right? But we're humans and we are beautifully flawed. And that's what makes us so awesome, is that we are all that way. We all have at least that one thing in common. So I love that. Thank you for commenting. But with these different things that we're complaining, we don't see them as being vulnerable. We have a negative association with these different things that reinforces that mentality of just bottling it up and just dealing with it, right? Like just take it on the shoulder and keep on moving. But guess what, ladies? We're not alone. Like I said, everyone struggles. Everyone needs to vent. Everyone needs to get these things out and off their chest. And that's why they're a therapist. That's why therapists are a thing. And that's why they are rock stars. But I digress. It makes me think of the nursery rhyme Humpty Dumpty. You've probably all heard it. If you haven't, little synopsis. I think it's what? Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Something like that. It's been a while since I visited that nursery rhyme. But one, we are humans that break and everything. You're not as fragile as an egg. You're not. And well, horses don't have thumbs, so they couldn't really help you. But all the kings, or in this instance, queens, men or women, are there to put you back together. Like you are not alone whenever something stressful or heartbreak or a bad life event, a loss of some sort happens. You're not alone. There are people in many different facets, whether it's a therapist, a friend, a coworker, a family member, a group like this. There is so much camaraderie and power in groups like these that no matter what a person's going through, the underlying similarity of I'm going through a tough time. This is hard for me to talk about. I'm being vulnerable and you're embraced. And that's where change and power happen. And it is a beautiful, beautiful thing. So that's when it's hard. We like the Humpty Dumpty nursery rhyme, you fall off balance. You might crack, you might break. Sometimes you might shatter beyond what you feel like can be repaired. I'd venture to say that we have all been there at some point, or we will likely be there at some point again. And it sucks, but it happens. It is a common thread for everyone. But those times when it is the hardest, I get it, the hardest to be vulnerable are also the same times when it is the most necessary to be vulnerable. But you don't have to write things out solo. But what you do have to do in order to not ride things out solo is to open yourself up. We have to open ourselves up. I'm going to include myself in this too, because I struggle with it, in order to let people in. We got to get away from these negative associations with things like admitting that you need help. Why is admitting something have a negative connotation to it? Or admitting defeat or confessing something. When you're confessing something, it's like you've done something wrong. I'm confessing that I've gone through this. Again, all of that makes it hard to open up, but just know and just try to tell yourself or tell others, we can be such a source of strength for others in this, that you're just expressing yourself. You're talking about your life events and that this is what you need, right? You're not admitting something or confessing something. And I know, and I've said this already, and I will say it so many times throughout, but it is so freaking hard. I get it. I can sit here and preach about all day long about the necessity of vulnerability and putting yourself out there and opening yourself up and all of the wonderful things that come from that hard work. But to live it, y'all, whew, that's a whole different story. And it's tough time after time. But what helps me is going back to these real life examples, like just thinking about that story of 10-year-old me. And I would challenge you to think about the first time, whether it was last week, last month, several years ago, whenever you were a kid. Try to think about the first time that you can remember being it tough for you to open up or admit something. And that after you did, it didn't get better, that it didn't help. You know what I mean? Like just think about that first time and it'll make it easier. That's what I have to do. I have to go back to those times that I was vulnerable on no matter what scale it was or how hard it was. And that it always paid off. Always pays off. Thinking about those real life examples of myself and of others. I've done it before. I can do it again. You've done it before, probably in so many ways that you don't even know that you've been vulnerable and opened yourself up and you made it through and you were already stronger and better. And that's where resilience builds. I feel like we look at things all the time when you go through hardships, that going through those hard things is what builds the resilience. I would argue to say it's that openness and that vulnerability during those hard times, that's what builds the resilience, because you're accepting it. For me personally, looking at how hard this was, beyond the 10-year-old situation, I went through a divorce a few years ago. I was heartbroken and I was devastated. Now, you might be saying, well, Jen, you work in the industry, you work for a family law firm, so you know what to do, you got this. Now, for the legal side of that, that's true. I was fortunate to already kind of be in the know of what the legal proceeding was like. But divorce affects a lot of people. So I don't take it lightly when people call our office and express what they're going through, right? It is so difficult for someone to admit. So I knew what the legal side of it was going to be, but nothing prepares you. And for some of you that have gone through this, undoubtedly gone through a divorce before, or know someone close to you that has, maybe both, nothing prepares you for just the emotional, just shitstorm of divorce. Pardon my French, but it's me. So here I am. Nothing prepares you for that. Whether it's even something, if you're the person that's initiating it or the person that is not, who maybe is blindsided or doesn't want it to happen, either way, there is just an emotional snowball that it's tough to work through. It absolutely is. So nothing could have prepared me for that. And although I worked in the industry and I was here to empower others to tell their story and to know that they would be better and that there's a light at the end of the tunnel and you're going to make it through this, I was ashamed all day long. I absolutely was. I didn't want anyone to know that my social media perfect relationship and that what I thought was a fairy tale love story was over. I didn't want to admit going back to that or confess that my relationship that I was sure was going to last for forever was over. And that now I was a statistic as well that I never thought that I would be a part of. But once I gathered the puddle of tears that I definitely was, and I took that first step of vulnerability and I told the very first person what happened. I was admitting it out loud. And that first act of vulnerability, which once again was my mom, that began my healing process. Because once I told that first person, then that went good, or that went okay. And it was, then I had somebody on my team, I had support, and that gave me strength to then tell the next person that needed to know what was going on in my life. Now, it's not like I was standing on the rooftop trying to tell everybody what was going on. Not everybody needed to know, but for those that needed to know, I slowly but surely started gaining the strength by opening up to that one person, admitting and confessing what was going on. And that helped me move forward. Because what happens when we do that is whenever we talk about those things out loud, that means that we're feeling it. And if we're feeling it and we're talking about it, that means that it's real. And that sucks sometimes. What that also means is that you can heal. So I have this little tagline that I like to say, that you feel it, you reel it, and then you heal it. And those things have to happen in order for all of that to happen. And it wasn't easy. The process of healing, people make it sound like such a simple thing sometimes, but it is ugly. And it's a back and forth kind of tango. There were days that, I felt so much progression in healing, and other days that I felt like I had taken 10 steps back. And there's still days, almost 4 years later, that I still am like, wow, that happened. And that was really tough. There might be a song that I hear, or thanks to Facebook and photos that pop up, that take me right back to that place. And that's just for my particular situation. There could be other situations or losses or whatever that you guys have faced that resonates with as well. It was like, after finding that courage to be, again, going back to what Brene said, being that courage to embrace the uncertainty, basically, it was like I 8 Miled myself, is what I like to say. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie by Eminem called 8 Mile. It was out a long time ago. And at the end, he goes into this rap battle and he basically lays out everything that he feels like somebody could use to say negatively against him, right? And so that's what I like to say. I'd like to say that I 8 Miled myself by discussing and talking about what was going on. Not only did it provide strength for me, it provided personally and emotionally, but it also provided strength professionally. So I challenge you, my fellow Humpties out there listening, thank you for taking the time to talk with or to listen today. When you fall off that wall, you teeter, you lose balance, or you just face plant, and you will, unfortunately, take a deep breath and let yourself break and let your yolk hang out. You'll be happy that you did. Thanks so much for listening, guys.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely.
I've found that telling that story for me has been both cathartic and healing, and lets other people know that they are not alone.
Absolutely.
It's funny how we as humans, lots of us are going through the same things. We just don't always share them.
Yeah. And there's a lot of commonalities and different things that people go through. And it can be, I feel like whenever you go through those things, you feel like you're alone in the world and the only person that's going through it, no matter what it is. And that's just not the case.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for joining us, Jen. I am so happy you joined us today, and so glad to have you here. Our next speaker is here. Welcome, Nancy. I think you two actually know each other.
Yes.
And, Nancy, let's unmute you and swap people around if we can. And there we go. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome. So happy to have you here.
Good to be here.
So you have a really interesting business, and I think that it's actually amazing that you're going after Jen, because the way that the talks today have flowed together has just been amazing. And just incredibly powerful. So I'm so happy to have you here.
Yeah,
thank you for joining us, and welcome. I'm going to exit myself and let you take the stage. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Haley. Hi, everyone, and thank you, Haley, for this opportunity. And as I was listening to everyone else, I was nodding my head a lot, because my story it may be difficult to hear, but stick with me, because there is redemption at the end. Many of us think that it's impossible to find meaning, purpose, and even joy again after a devastating loss. That's what I thought on November 8th, 2000, when my then 17-year-old daughter, Leah, died. Travel back with me to November 3rd of that year. I was working as a project manager for a large construction company in Bethesda, Maryland, on the NIH campus. My office was in a construction trailer, and about mid-morning, the police walked in, the campus police, and they asked me to come with them because my daughter Leah had been in an accident. I, of course, dropped everything, grabbed my bag, and went with them, asking them what happened. And they couldn't tell me. I began thinking, so many things I began thinking. I had no idea what I was going to be faced with when I got there. I did, however, have the presence of mind to call my husband, Dan, who happened to be working nearby, and told him that we were on the way to the hospital so he could meet us there when we got there. That was the longest trip of my entire life. And even though I asked a couple more times what had happened, I didn't have any answers. When we arrived at the hospital, we were met by Leah's guidance counselor and principal. And they told us that she had been in a car accident. She had hit the only tree in the middle of a cornfield, and she was in surgery. I was escorted back to the surgical waiting room. However, I couldn't sit down. I was shaking too much. And I paced between the waiting room and the chapel, just shaking and trying to calm myself down, praying for a miracle. Our son Peter was in college at the time, about an hour away, and we called him, and he joined us there at the hospital. When her surgeon came out to greet us after the surgery, he had a very grim look on his face, and he told us that he didn't think the prognosis was very good. As a matter of fact, he didn't think she would last the weekend, and he was going out of town. And I said very strongly, I will see you on Monday morning. There was no way I was giving up on my daughter. By that time, friends of hers and ours had begun gathering in the waiting room. They were bringing us food and prayers and just wanting to help support us through this unimaginable thing that we were going through. But after about 5 days, she up until this time she had been in an induced coma because of brain swelling. So we were talking with her, telling her that her friends were there, but we never really got to talk to her. After about 5 days, the doctors told us that she had not had any brain activity for a few days. And we knew this, that we were there constantly. So we knew what was happening, but we were hoping for that miracle. And so we had to make a very difficult decision, the decision to remove her from life support. That was the hardest decision we ever had to make. Now, when Leah got her driver's license a year before with Dan, she was adamant about having an organ donor heart on her license. And we decided to honor those wishes. So that added another layer of complication to the whole situation, because we had to remove life support, and yet the organs needed to remain viable. When we knew that Leah wasn't going to stay with us, we made the decision to ask any of her friends or our friends who wanted to go into her room to say goodbye to her. And to this day, some of them still thank us for giving them that opportunity. I think it was really an important part of their grief journey. When I left the hospital early that Wednesday morning on November 8th, I thought my life was over. And in truth, my life as I knew it was over. I was unable to function. All I wanted to do was crawl into bed, pull the covers up over my head, and never emerge. I couldn't take a shower or get dressed. And I thought if I ate enough chocolate chip cookies, I would never have to feel the pain of losing my daughter. I was a mess. And I wanted to completely isolate myself from everybody and everything. I had no idea how I was going to go on. About 2 weeks after she died, I received these two powerful messages, which I credit for really saving my life. The first one is that losing Leah is too high a price to pay to not live the life that I was meant to live. Wow. And the second one was that everything I had done up until that point had prepared me for what was coming next. And I didn't exactly know how those two messages were going to play into my healing, but I knew they were important. And every time I was tempted to stay in bed too long, because let's face it, when you've lost a loved one, staying in bed can be the self-care that you need. But every time I felt like I was isolating too much, those messages came back. And my feelings were very intense and overwhelming, and they came at me all at once. Talk about being vulnerable. I was going to have to talk to people about this. I didn't want to do that. But I knew if I was going to honor my daughter and the messages that I received, that I was going to have to figure something out. I turned to a practice that was already a part of my life at the time. And I already had an established relationship with the facilitator of this practice. And that's what I turned to. It was comfortable. I knew it was powerful. And I began to process my grief in this way. And that was the first indication that everything I had done up until that point had prepared me for what was coming next. And this is a practice called samyama. It's a present moment awareness practice, and it allowed me to be with my feelings one at a time, rather than the overwhelming, intense way that they were coming at me, in my heart. And our hearts are alchemical vessels. And eventually they help to shift the feelings. Now, I had experienced this with other feelings, but feelings of grief are just so intense. And I found that I was able to, with the help of my facilitator, I was able to access those feelings in my heart. And I was able to be with the pain of losing my daughter without the stories that my head was spinning. Those stories that that keep us spinning and spinning and spinning. The what ifs and the if onlys. If only I had been a better mother, I could have kept her safe. Well, what if I hadn't gone to work that day? We could have gone shopping or something else. My mind would slice and dice those stories over and over and over again and try to make the outcome different, and that wasn't going to happen. Now, we've heard a lot today about being with what is without needing to change it. We have those situations, and how do we deal with them? I found that every time I was able to bring my feelings into my heart and feel them exactly as they appeared in each moment, I would receive blessings and grace every single time. And when that first happened, I thought, I don't deserve to receive blessings and grace. My daughter died. Why should I deserve to receive these gifts? And I began to realize eventually, which was another part of the healing journey, that the blessings and grace were the exact things that I needed to keep me on that healing journey. So here's a few examples. One day I found a lilac in my mailbox, and where we lived at the time, lilacs didn't grow very well, and I knew for a fact that there were no lilac bushes in our neighborhood. But that didn't stop me from going around that neighborhood looking for that lilac bush, because how else would a lilac have landed in my mailbox? Another time I was driving around town running errands and I needed gas. I pulled into a gas station that I didn't normally go to, and I saw Leah's favorite math teacher, Mrs. Anderson. And we hadn't seen each other for about 2 years at that point. We hugged, and she told me about how she had changed her life, about how her priorities had changed because of knowing Leah. And we would often hear stories from Leah's friends about how she was always the one they called when they needed someone to really listen to them. And we were learning things about Leah that we didn't know because she was 17. There was a lot of teenage angst going on, which made it difficult for me to end my physical relationship with Leah at that time. That was a part of my healing journey. As I traveled my journey a little bit further, I began to realize that grief is a lifelong journey. We've heard some of the other speakers today talk about that. It's not just when you lose a loved one like I thought it was. But grief occurs whenever we experience a loss. The loss of a job or a relationship, the loss of our health, the loss of the ability to have coffee with a friend like we did last year. So much loss last year associated with COVID, associated with the way that we live. And I thought, well, what if we had resources so that we could meet the grief when it arises? Not that it would make it any easier. It's still going to be, we still have to be vulnerable. We still have to speak about our feelings. We don't like to speak about our feelings. We don't like to visit grief. It makes us uncomfortable. It's painful. We don't like to be painful. And one of the things I learned is that we need to learn how to be better feelers rather than just wanting to feel better. So some of the things that I did through my journey, and I use these now when I work with my clients, is samyama, of course. We always start with samyama. And that's the foundation of my work because the present moment holds everything that we need. But what about gratitude? Gratitude was huge for me because I thought, what do I have to be grateful for? Is it my life over? There's nothing left. But what about clean water to drink and a place to rest and nourishing food rather than all those chocolate chip cookies? I can be grateful for all of those things. Self-care. We hear a lot about self-care. And there's a lot of different views on it. What do we need when we are grieving? In whatever stage of grief you're in, what do we need? Maybe we do need to rest or to eat nourishing food, because nourishing food gives us a greater capacity to be able to feel our feelings. Or movement, simple movement can help move those feelings through as well. Creativity was really important for me because creativity connected me to the person that I was before Leah died, the person that I was during Leah's death, and afterwards. The essence of who I am. And the essence of who I am was being called to stay on this healing journey and to be true to who I was, to excavate the person, the life that I was meant to live. And so all of those things helped me to navigate this time. Now, it's true, the grief journey is not linear. It's very chaotic. And Jen mentioned associative memories. Yeah, you can think you're doing fine, and then all of a sudden, bam, you hear a song, you smell a scent, you see a piece of clothing, and you're right back in the grief. So having these resources can help you to move through them. And when we don't, the other thing I thought about, when we meet the grief along the way, it doesn't stay underground. Because unresolved grief, I felt like when Leah died, all of my unresolved grief said, there's an opening for me now. I want some attention too. And that's another reason why it can be so intense. I became certified as a Samyama practitioner in 2009 because I saw how powerful it was in helping me move through my grief. And I began to see clients part-time because I was still working my full-time job. But 75% of my clients were grief clients, and I wasn't offering it for grief at the time. I was offering it as a resource for daily living, which it is. It works on everything. But 75% of my clients were grief clients. So I was already being prepared to do this work, and I didn't want to do it. I wasn't going to, who am I to help someone else go through such a powerful thing? And yet I was called to do it. So I began working with clients, and I thought, that's it. I have made it. I'm living the life that I was meant to live. My life had meaning. My life had purpose. And occasionally there would be some joy in it. I've made it. And that's when I heard, it's time to write your book. And I said, nope, absolutely not. I'm not an author. I'm not going to write a book. I'm not going to put my vulnerable story in black and white for anyone to read. Absolutely not. That's not going to happen. So I resisted writing the book until it was easier to just write it than to continue to resist it. And I wrote my book, and then I was called to tell my story and do book events. And I realized that the life that I was meant to live isn't someplace I will arrive and it'll be there. I will be there forever. The life I meant to live continues to evolve as I do. And I was able to, through my grief journey, step fully into who I am in each moment. Now I want to end with this story about a real surprise that I didn't know I was preparing myself for as I followed the breadcrumbs of my grief journey. Now, my daughter died over 20 years ago. And this past July, we were blessed with our first grandchild. I met her in late August. And when I met her, my heart just broke open. I was able to meet her with a completely open heart. And as I was reflecting on that, I realized that if I had not tended to my grief when I did, my heart would have had too many layers of protection on it to fully welcome Aria into my life. It broke me open so much that we decided to leave Raleigh, where I hear it was 70 degrees this week, and move to St. Paul, Minnesota to be near my son and his family, where we're just coming out of minus 17 degree weather last week. Because I followed the path of my grief journey, I am able to step fully into where life is calling me in each moment. My question to you is, where is your life calling you? Are you willing to step fully into where life is calling you in each moment, whether you are grieving or not? I hope you say yes, because the world needs you. We all need you to be exactly who you are. Thank you.
That is beautiful. We do need you to be exactly who you are. Thank you for your story.
Thank you, Haley. It's an honor to tell it.
Absolutely. It is important to tell it. Thank you for joining me today, and many blessings.
Thank you.
Perspective is beautiful. I'm welcoming our next speaker up. Welcome, Tracie. So happy to have you here.
Likewise, I'm so happy to be here.
This is so exciting. I am going to let you take the stage, my friend, and poof myself out of here. Thank you.
Poof. All right. Free and clear. I got the whole place here. I love it. I want to first, before I start, acknowledge Nancy, because I didn't know her story before coming on here. And I'm always so inspired by others who have a grief story, because my story starts with a similar feeling. And I didn't quite catch the exact story, but I'm going to tell you mine, because like her, I think we all find that how we progress through this journey of life is often the best way for us to show others that they can get through whatever hard times they're getting through and come out the other side. The talk that I have been using for these last couple of years is about how to shine bright and thrive during challenging times. And during the pandemic, it's kind of the perfect opportunity to talk about challenging times, because there's not one person on the planet who isn't going through some sort of challenging times. But mine started a while ago, and of course went up and down, but I'm going to tell you my story. I grew up in Silicon Valley here in California. I'm currently in Santa Cruz, but I grew up in Cupertino, home of Apple Computer, San Jose, which they call themselves the capital of Silicon Valley. And in the 80s, 70s and 80s, this was a big kind of center of the technology world, right? It's where the internet kind of started. It's where computers really became, it's the home of Apple, right? And there's not a person on the planet today who doesn't know what Apple is. Well, it was right down the street from where I grew up. And growing up in that environment, I was very much a high achiever. I believed that we needed to work hard, get good grades, go to college, graduate, get the good job, make the money. And anyone who knows anything else about Silicon Valley knows it's very expensive to live there. So that was all part of the equation, was if you're going to be successful, you had to do all these things in order to thrive. I did all those things. And after, getting through college, starting my career, I'd been working in that field for about 10 years in the corporate world. My boyfriend and I at the time decided to get married. We decided to start our family. And when Paul and I had our first child, immediately after Christian was born, Paul was diagnosed with cancer. And this was a big surprise. Although in a way, there are no surprises, because if you are, yes, there are surprises. And this was a big surprise for us, because we never really paid attention, either of us, to our health and wellness. We were living in the moment, moving forward with our lives, and never stopped to think about how the things that we spent our days on were affecting our future. So we were both smokers. We both, didn't really have any good eating habits, lots of caffeine in our lives, lots of sugar, fat, all the poor eating habit kind of story. And so after he was diagnosed with cancer, we had our son, and I spent the next, bit of time balancing, learning how, well, first of all, having a baby, then learning how to raise a baby while at the same time balancing caring for him and making sure he went through all his treatments and chemo and radiation and went back and forth. And at the same time, I'm working full time. He was going to be the stay-at-home dad and didn't have an opportunity to do so because he didn't have the energy for that during his treatments. Thankfully, he got better. We had our second child. And shortly after she was born, he was re-diagnosed with, it was metastatized everywhere. And he made it about another 1.5 years or so, long enough for me to get my feet back under me after having that second baby to be able to survive after he was gone. So the kids were 1.5 and 4 when he passed away. And that next 1.5 years was the grief fog, right? I didn't have a plan for the future. I just was in survival mode to go moment to moment to moment to make sure that the kids had what they need to become older kids and that I could go to work and to provide for our family. We didn't have any support locally, save a few friends. Family was all out of the area. So it was very much survival mode, moment by moment, trying to make sure that we could move forward. And about 1.5 years later, I finally started to realize that if we stayed living in the way that we were living, that 5 years from then, 10 years from then, like, life was not going to be the way I wanted it to be for my kids. I was the only parent left, and I needed to make some changes. I was exhausted all the time, completely like all alone, and I didn't know how to accept help. I didn't know how to change my lifestyle so that I could have more energy and be a more present parent for my kids. So I got some help. I found a health program that had a coach, and that coach taught me the value of, or the ability to receive help, to allow people to guide me down a path where I thought I always had to be on my own. That was a big learning because it really changed the trajectory of our whole lives. I didn't know when I went on what I thought was a diet, I didn't know that that was going to change my whole career and my whole way of viewing life. Lots of personal and professional development during this time in my life. Once I lost the weight, I lost 55 pounds that year. And Haley, I know I know you have a story that's more significant than that from a weight standpoint, but I'm sure you can relate to the changes that happen in our lives when we're ready to make real changes in the way that we live day to day. I decided that now that I could imagine a different future for myself and for my kids, I could really take a look and dream about what was possible for us in the long-term picture. So after 17 years in corporate America, I decided that I was going to leave that life and become a coach full-time. And I didn't know a ton of coaches other than those who were in the health and wellness world. But I started to open my perspective to other types of coaching, to life coaching, to people who were helping people with their businesses, and started to embrace new ways of thinking and new ways of teaching and new ways of sharing this natural desire to help others experience what I'd experienced, which was a total shift in what they thought they should do versus what they wanted to do and how their life could really unfold. So I became a coach. I did leave that corporate job, and after a few years, I started to expand what I was coaching people in and really learned that the people that were drawn to me, that I loved working with, weren't only working on health goals, although most people have some sort of health goal, but really we wanted a more fulfilling life. We wanted the ability to stand up and say, sorry, it looks like I hit my desk, to stand up and say, I am willing to be seen. And I'm willing to do things in my life that will allow me to be the real me. You see, when I was younger And going through college, I really felt like I needed to be what people thought I was supposed to be. Being a 6 foot tall woman, I was often very visible, but in a junior role, sometimes that wasn't seen as appropriate. I needed to be what my bosses and my clients thought I should be in order to be accepted in the corporate environment. So once I started coaching, I was able to break out of that shell and really become the natural, bold, and brighter personality that you see today with the pink hair and all the tucking. And the real gift in all of this is that I was able to open my mind to new possibilities and to new dreams, and to believe that I could become something new. And that by doing that, I was able to be an example to my kids that they can be whatever they want to be, whatever they believe that they can achieve. And now I get to teach women the same thing, right? It's time to break through the shell of what we are supposed to be doing and how we're supposed to be acting, how we should be. I hate that word, should. Between should and fine, those are like the 2 words I think would be great if they could leave the English language. That would be awesome. The ability to break out of that shell that we put over ourselves in order to protect ourselves from judgment and from other people's, telling us what we think we should do and believing that in ourselves. That's the gift. That's the gift that I try to give to people every day, to realize that if you believe that you are supposed to be something you're not, then you're believing a lie. And it's time to step into the truth that you can live a bold life, that you can live that life of your dreams, and that you are worthy of those dreams that you dream. So now I teach people that, right? We teach that if you have this thing that you're imagining in your life, let's start. Let's go after it. What do you want to do? And with support and encouragement and guidance, I find that people really are excited again about what's possible in their lives and what's possible to become. Even at an older age, we can still become what we always wanted to be, which is that vibrant, bold, incredible woman that we can be proud of ourselves, and we can be that example for our families and friends and community. And there's nothing better. I highly suggest that you take a look at what it is that you're dreaming about and find some help, whether that's me, whether that's someone else, a friend, a family member, a coach, some sort of support. When Paul died and I was alone after all the family had gone home and all the visits ended, people tried to offer me support, and I didn't know how to accept it. And that was a huge learning place for me, to understand that the acceptance of help is the first step towards becoming the woman that we really want to become. So I highly recommend it. And that's what I have for you today. Thank you so much.
Hey there.
Hi.
That was amazing. It's funny how, or not so funny how.
That's what I started with, right? It's funny. Wait, it's not funny.
It's not funny. It's interesting and enlightening and eye-opening how, these changes in our lives. And once we realize that, there's almost like we hit rock bottom, we're all alone. Oh, wait a minute, we're not all alone.
Yep. And the ability to recognize that, I think, that's the big reveal. That's the big awakening. Is, we might have these dreams in our head that, hey, I can imagine this, that would be really cool. But we often think that alongside that would be really great is, but there's no way I could do that. And we just shove it down, right? You bury it until you see someone else doing it. And that's why I love social media so much, because, you know, and I think a lot of people can see both sides of that, of course, where there's the negative side, of course. But if you curate your experience, what you see is the fact that other people are doing amazing things, and they started with no more experience than me and no more support than me. So, but they got support, and that's how things changed. And that's, you know, it's a big step in that direction for sure.
Absolutely. I talked a lot about developing your business besties.
Yeah.
And, you know, having a network of people who you check in with regularly, even if it's just silly stuff. You know,
what's up?
You know, what's up? You know, hey, I tried to slice my finger off when I cooked dinner tonight. Or
well,
I did that last night.
Yeah, like this morning, I saw a book that came out, and it's Kelly McGonigal's new book. It's called Joy in Movement or something like that. And like that made me really excited because I have a friend who talks about joy in motion. And so as a business, you know, as a connection in business and someone that we've networked with and someone that we've been growing together, immediately sent that book to her. Make sure that she knows all about it because it completely serves her mission. And it serves my heart to share it with her if she doesn't already know about it. And the more we can do that with each other, I mean, that's community. I mean, you know, the value of having, you know, a thriving community around you. There's nothing more important, in my opinion, than having other people in your life that you can go to if you need them, or just knowing that they're there so that you can continue to move forward.
Absolutely. The power of community is huge.
Huge.
And also that power of developing the who you are and who you're meant to be. I think that's been a continual thread today. So yeah, becoming who you were meant to be.
Yep. Well, or who you always were, that maybe got, like I said, covered with a shell, right? That protective shell that kind of got us through a hard time. And, you know, the pandemic is a perfect example, right? For this last year, we've all kind of been in this alternate existence in a lot of ways because we're not doing our usual, right? We're not going out, we're not seeing people. And to recognize that that's across the board, like everyone out there, helps us again feel that we're not alone. It puts us in community, and we can take that experience and know that it's a common experience and move forward together with that.
That's awesome. Cool. Yes. Thank you so much for joining us today. And
my pleasure.
I just, you know, I feel like I build these events just so I can listen to all the speakers and sit here and get my inspiration for the week or the month, just like in one swell swoop, and then just like fill up my cup and it's running over. So I'm so excited to have you guys here today. Thank you.
Absolutely. And that's why I like being on things like this too, because, you know, 15 minutes of me blah, blah, blahing means that now, man, my energy right now, just from sharing my story with you and from hearing other people, hi, Jillian, you know, it's that vibration just, oh my gosh, like I feel 10 feet tall right now, and I'm already 6 feet tall. So, I mean, it's maybe 12 feet tall, twice as tall.
That's awesome. I love it so much. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And now through the magic of poof, I'm going to poof people around, and thank you. And welcome, Jillian. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited that we were able to make this work, and I appreciate being shuffled around a little bit.
That's awesome. Yeah. I don't think if you said anything that our audience would have known that we had shuffled people.
Well, it actually plays right into what I'm about to talk about. So
awesome.
That works.
I'm going to let you have the stage. Here we go.
So, hey, everybody, I'm so excited to be here. You know, I just heard the prior speaker talking about making sure being yourself, and I'm going to lean into that a little bit more and talking about setting boundaries, setting priorities, and learning how to say no. So, I think everybody now with COVID, it is just pulled in a million different directions. And because our physical space seems to be, for a lot of us, remaining the same, whether work or home, we are, most of us, in the same environment, working from home. It makes it really hard to set boundaries. It makes it really hard to learn when and how to say no. So I'm going to say something that is going to make half of you really mad and the other half of you go, I knew it. There is no such thing as balance. It does not exist. And that's okay. And I'm going to tell you why that's okay during this talk. So the reason that I say there's no such thing as balance, I was at a women's event years ago, and I heard the mayor of Charlotte, which is a town in North Carolina, very large, I shouldn't say a town, a very large city here in North Carolina, speaking about, she was the first to actually say that out loud, at least that I had heard. I think we are taught our entire lives that we can find balance, that we can do it all. And she was the first person that I heard stand on stage and say, you can't. There are going to be days where your family takes priority. There are going to be months that your family takes priority. There are going to be days, there are going to be months, there are going to be times that your work is going to take priority, and everything in between. So I recently heard a TED Talk by a gentleman who wanted to challenge the audience to think about your life differently. And I'm going to challenge you to do the same thing. There is no such thing as work and life. It is all a part of one big ball, and one big ball that is continually rolling forward. So whether your work is taking priority, that is moving you forward. Or if your family is taking priority, that is moving you forward. You can also put on here your health. You can put your hobbies, lots of different items, your friends, your relationships, those things that truly enrich our lives. They are all a part of the same. So it's not about balance. It's about moving forward. And so, you say to me, well, I have all of these things. How do I figure out what to move forward? So part of that is going to be whittling down. So think about the parts of your life in big chunks. You have family here, you have your health, you have work, and you have all the other, think about grouping yourself into grouping these into big priorities. Your friends could be another group. So we'll take those 4. So you have family, friends, work, health. All of them are incredibly important. But then you look at me and you say, well, that PTA bake sale, where does that fit? Well, you tell me, is that family? Is that work? Is that something that you enjoy? So it's a hobby. So maybe that goes towards your health because it goes towards your mental health and your personal development. But it fits within one of those 4 categories. And every day you are going to pick which top 2 to 3 things are going to be your priorities for the day. And then you're going to focus on those. And you will see that as the days go on, that you can find balance, not in every single moment of every single day, but throughout life and how all of the pieces move you together. So let's take a minute and dive into the details and to the minutia, because even within those pieces, you have to pick. You have to be able to discern what is moving you forward. I'm going to use an example for you with regard to my health. Health is one of my big buckets. Okay, I have several. I have 5 big buckets, and one of them is health. I'm training for a marathon in November. Okay, I am so excited about this marathon. It is something I've always wanted to do, and I buckled down and decided that I am going to go forward with this marathon. I've registered. I'm just a few months away. It's in November. I'm gearing up. So I was recently looking at my training plan, and I have a health trainer. And she and I were looking through, and I have been struggling on my long runs. And part of my health goal is also to get to physically fit. Now, for me, it is about losing weight, and it is not for the appearance sake. It is for my health, for making sure that my heart is healthy and all of that. And so we'd also been playing with my nutrition, but I was noticing that on my runs, I was running out of steam. And part of that is because she's had me on a calorie deficit. Well, I have these two goals within health. You know, I want to drop down my weight, and then I also want to run this marathon. So I have to discern and pick which one is a higher priority. And for me, it is making sure that I fulfill this marathon that I've registered for in November. So you know what that means? I've got to up my calorie intake, which means my weight loss may not be as quick as I'd like it to be. So we have to explore and evaluate. And so I explored, okay, I have these two competing goals. They seem similar. They're within the same category, but they're starting to butt heads with each other. So I explore and I evaluate, and then I eliminate one of them, which is significant calorie deficit, and then I execute. So there are three things when you're looking through the different aspects of your life. Okay, let's take your kids' school. You want to be room mom, you want to run the gala, and you want to run the bake sale. Those are three things. Well, what if they're all happening? What if they ask you to be room mom in March? They ask you to run the bake sale in March, and they ask the spring gala is in March. I'm here to tell you, you cannot do all the things. There is a set limited time in the day, and you have a set limited amount of energy. So you need to explore and evaluate. Maybe you can do two of the three, but you need to be honest with yourself. How much time do you have? What is most important to you? Maybe the most important thing to you is being present with your child. Well, then room mom would take precedent. So maybe you can't do running the bake sale, and that's okay. So we explore and evaluate, we eliminate, and then we execute. And what this is going to do is it's going to free you up from the I have to the I choose to. You don't have to do it all. You can choose and set boundaries. Now, when you start to set these boundaries, you're going to run into some conflicts, and you're going to realize that you can't make everybody happy. But in order to make most people happy, you've got to set boundaries and maybe not make everybody happy at the same time. So in order to set these boundaries, you're going to need to do 6 things, okay? You're going to need to know and set your limit. You're going to need to let go of that guilt. Maybe the principal of the school is like, oh, who am I going to ask to do this bake sale now if you can't do it? Let go of the guilt. That is not your priority. It is her priority, or his, the principal of the school. It is the principal of the school's priority, not yours. My principal of my son's school is a female. The third thing you're going to do is be direct and assertive. So when that principal comes to you and says, I need you to do that bake sale, just be direct. You don't have to be mean or angry. Just be direct and assertive. I'm sorry, I'm not available to do that, but I'm really looking forward to being the room mom for my kid in March. And just let her, you are direct and assertive. Do not leave the door open, because if you say, well, I don't think I can, with that door cracked, whoever is trying to compete with your time is going to try to get in. So direct and assertive. And you're going to want to set some time aside for yourself. You know how we talked about exploring, evaluating, eliminating, and executing? Well, in order to do that, you're going to have to set some time aside for yourself. So throughout the day, you need to set some time so that you can look and set your boundaries. You're going to want to seek support from 2 or 3 people. Tell them, communicate with them what those boundaries are, and help them or have them help you remain accountable. And then start small. You don't have to say no to everything right off the bat if you're one of these people that have said yes to everything from the beginning. Start small, set one boundary, and then move on from there. So now how do you say no, okay? There are 4 ways that you say no, and I'm going to rehash all of these strategies in just a moment. How do you say no? You want to do it gracefully. So you want to be clear. We talked about being direct and assertive. You want to be clear. You want to know what you're willing to do. So if she comes to you and says, I'd really love for you to organize the bake sale, respond and say, I don't have time to organize it, but I really look forward to making brownies for it. Something that you have time to do that maybe gives a little bit of pressure off of the person. You can suggest an alternative. I really can't do the bake sale. I'm looking forward to making brownies. And hey, I just found out Susie, little Johnny Smith's mom, she just finished with her other bake sale, and I think she has time free, so she can do it. So you can suggest an alternative and point to somebody else. You can also ask, hey, I can't do the bake sale in March. Do you think we could do it in April? Because you'll be surprised if that principal really wants you to do it. They will be able to move things. They will be able to move dates to accommodate you, just depending on their schedule. And that's going to be their choice. They're going to have to choose. Do they want you to do it? If so, it'll be in April, or they can get Susie Q's mom to do it as well. So let's look back at setting boundaries. When you're going through the setting boundary process, you want to explore and evaluate. You want to eliminate, and then you execute. When you're setting boundaries, you want to know your limits, let go of that guilt, be direct and assertive. Don't leave the door open. Set aside time for you to be able to explore and evaluate. Seek support from 2 or 3 people and start small. Now, when you're saying no, be graceful. 4 ways to be graceful. Be clear. Let them know what you're willing to do. Suggest an alternative. Maybe an alternative date or time, or an alternative, maybe incorporate the bake sale into the spring gala that you're already focusing on and organizing, or point to somebody else. So let's look at how we can move forward in our lives. And if you need any help setting these boundaries, I'll be happy to help and talk to you. But that's it. Just those key tips, and that is all we have. So I'm just waiting now. Hey, there you are.
I'm here.
I think I'm done.
Haley, wake up. No, I've been here the whole time, promise. No, it's really cool that there's lots of ways to say no and like gracefully bow out of doing stuff, because that to me has always been like one of the hardest things. As a mom, because I have 4. And yeah, telling somebody no and, not being disappointed in myself, it's hard.
Absolutely. So part of the exploring and evaluating process is understanding and being comfortable in what is a priority to you. And just because something is not a priority to you does not mean that it's not valid, that it doesn't have worth. It just doesn't have a place in your space. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. And people will understand that, especially if you're using those graceful tactics to say no. And you can say, I can't do it in March, but I can do it in April. You're showing them that you are placing value in what they're asking. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing I think is to separate. If that principal comes to you and asks you to do the bake sale, you place value and worth in the principal, not in the bake sale, right? So it is okay to separate those two. By saying no to the bake sale, you are not devaluing the principal or devaluing their thoughts. And you have to really learn how to separate the two of those things. And that's a whole nother talk.
Absolutely. And I think that it's just such a valuable skill, because back to your point, there is no such thing as balance.
Mm-hmm. And that's okay. And I think we all need to get comfortable in knowing that it's okay to be out of balance, as long as you're comfortable. And when you step back and look at the greater picture as a whole, maybe every single day for the last 2 weeks, work has taken priority. Then you take a step back and you say, okay, maybe I'll take a few days and I'm going to switch it up, and I'm going to put friends as a priority. I haven't seen my friends in 2 weeks. So it's balance is not about balancing day to day and making sure everybody is equal. It is about keeping the ball together and rolling the ball forward.
Absolutely. I love that so much. Thank you for, coming and joining us today. I think that was a really nice way to tie this all up too. Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, guys. And this has been a ton of fun. So we will see you guys next month, March 25th, for the next WEN-Talk. We'll see you guys later. Bye.